folks, John Covington here. We're trying something new. Dan got some brand new video stuff, and whenever we do that, we're going to use it, whether it works or not. So we're here actually in my office instead of our conference room. So we have a new venue here. Hopefully, I'll be able to do better. So anyway, I would like you to subscribe and like the video before we get started. That helps us out with getting more people to look at the video. We're going to talk today about assumptions. Assumptions, prejudice, bias, all that stuff is the same thing, belief systems, and it's something we all have, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I have a bias that when my wife turns on the stove that it's hot, and that's my assumption. I don't want to test it and put my hand on the eye. That assumption keeps me from putting my hand on the eye. A lot of assumptions that we have are invalid, and many of them are hurtful. And so we'll talk a little bit about those. And I I'd go off on and have these hobbies that I do, sort of like for several years at a time. I'll go something and I'll just dive all into it. Well, several years ago, I dove into training working dogs, and I had a working line German Shepherd, and I taught her to do search and rescue work. I also taught her to do drug detection, and in the process of training her, I said, well, gosh, that's just like people. So I made the assumption that everything that I was doing with her would translate into humans, and I was never able to invalidate the assumption. So I wrote a book called What I Learned About Leadership from My Dog. One of the lessons in there was about assumptions. And in training, her name was Maggie, in training Maggie to track, you'd have a person helping you, and they'd walk out. That's the person you're going to go find, and they would drop little pieces of hot dog every once in a while in their step. And the whole idea is to keep the dog's nose to the ground, so they'd be able to sense the ruptured grass and the skin you're flaking off, and things that make up your scent deal. And when you make a turn, the person laying the track would make that turn. They'd stick a little utility flag in the ground and then go a little bit and add additional hot dogs to reward the dog for finding that turn. So pretty soon the dog says, when I run across one of these utility flags, there's going to be extra hot dogs involved. So pretty soon the dog develops a bias. Well, several years ago, my wife and I, before we moved to Alabama, we were down here visiting, and I had Maggie out off leash on the University of Alabama campus, and they were doing a lot of constructions, and these little flags were everywhere. Maggie stopped and she looked around. She thought she had died and gone to doggy heaven. They're just going to be hot dogs everywhere. So she runs over to that first flag. No hot dogs. Takes off over to another flag, no hot dogs. Well, you get the point. It didn't take very many that pretty soon she realized, and she was able to invalidate her bias, and her bias was, whenever I see a flag, there's going to be a hot dog, and there wasn't any. So there's an example of biases are learned. There is a bias that was learned, and then it was unlearned. I want to give one about myself. I was in Wisconsin, Milwaukee Airport, and I'd been working with a client for a week or so, and I was tired. It's a Friday afternoon. All I wanted to do was just get home. And so I'm sitting there in the airport at the gate, reading a book, enjoying myself, and here comes this guy. And he's a black guy, probably in his 40s. He's got really fancy clothes that are 3 times too big for him. He's got the baseball cap with the flat brim. He's got big old gold chain, and he's on his cell phone, and he's talking in a very, very loud manner. And I was just irritated. And so, and I've got all these thoughts going through my head as to the value this guy has as a human being. And so, pretty soon I began to hear what he was saying. It's impossible not to overhear his discussion. And he was a contractor. He was a small contractor, and he was setting up. He was lining up subcontractors for the next week. And I sort of kicked myself in the rear end. I says, if everyone in this airport, I have more in common with this guy than anyone else. So I sort of, you know, gave myself a bad mark. We get on the airplane, and I'd flown enough times where I had this upgrade into first class. I'm sitting there, and they're just about to close the door, and in comes, and I have a first class seat and nobody next to me, so I'm gonna have a good flight. And this young black guy comes in. He got the big baggy clothes. He got the chain around his neck and the whole 9 yards. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and I think we both had the same level of, oh no, you know. He looks at this old white guy, and I look at this guy when he's got the thing in his ear listening to music. And so I figured, well, there goes that. So he sits down next to me, and being the old guy, I figured I needed to break the ice. So I said something. Well, by the time we were done, we talked all the way from Milwaukee to Baltimore, and he was a delightful young man. He was a University of Maryland student. He was up there visiting his girlfriend that he was going to get married to, and then he wanted to start a restaurant business. So we talked about that, and I kicked myself again. I said, "Here's two times within a period of 5 minutes that you have let your assumptions de- determine someone's character. Wrong both times." So then today, and good grief, this is, you know, like St. Patrick's Day in 2022. We're having a small group that's meeting at Wright's Breakfast here in Tuscaloosa. And I get there a little early because it's the first time we've ever met there. And there are four young black guys sitting over in a corner. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, man, 5:30 in the morning, you know, four young black guys here. That's pretty cool. So they get up, and of three of the four, their britches were falling down, and so I'm starting to have, you know, bad thoughts. So they go and they check out. It's a $40 bill, and I know the waitress, and they gave her a 70-cent tip on a $40 bill. Well, that didn't go over good. Well, had I not stopped and challenged my assumptions, and my assumptions would have been bad. I said, well, you know, first of all, no one's probably ever taught them not to leave a 70-cent tip on a $40 bill. So that's, you know, that probably was just a lack of knowing. And why in the world would I use the way they dressed to determine what they're doing? So I think I've grown a little bit. But this is how these biases and stuff like that works. So I could probably easily do a video a week on nothing but assumptions because they're so dangerous for us. Our meetings have been going, and we'll sort of change gears here a little bit. We had a great meeting yesterday. This is spring break in Tuscaloosa, so we had some of our guys missing. But we have been wanting some young white people to join us, and we had two young white men join us from Northport Baptist Church, which I think is great. And they both said that they plan on continuing to be with the group throughout. I think this is a really, really neat thing to do. In our group, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but in our group yesterday, we talked about normal people. Okay. And we said normal people are not people that work in academia or people that are employed by the traditional church. Okay. And those are the people that are normally making the biggest racket about racism and stuff like this. And what we were talking about in our small group is just, we're maybe normal's a bad term, but we're just regular old kick 'em in the teeth folks. Part of what we do is not, with the discussion of racism is not something that we would do within our normal job. We have people that are consultants. We have a guy who's a basketball coach. We have people that do a variety of types of things, police officers, and they're just normal folks. And for them I think that for that group of people to expand and to get together and to attack relationships is much more important than people that are officials in the church or that are in the academic community. I think the academic community is not going to solve this. And the upper echelon in the church is not going to solve this. This is going to get solved by regular people. And so with that, hopefully I've not caused any friction here. So we're looking forward to being back to full group next week. And so looking forward to a wonderful 2022. And hope you all have a good best of the month.